Hey everybody, it's Jimmy Smith back with another classic Fight Club. It's trending in the right direction, so I'm going to keep it going for a little bit. But share, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and see if we can get this over 3,000 views apiece. That's my goal right now. We're almost there. Damn it, we can get there. Eddie Alvarez actually went on Twitter and commented about my breakdown of his fight versus Kawajiri. He appreciated it. Anyway, this one is Hayato Sakurai versus Anderson Silva at 170 pounds. The reason I chose this, a few reasons. Number one, recently, Big John McCarthy, a guy I like and respect a lot, came out and said that MVP had a similar, had faced tougher talent at his point in his career than Anderson Silva had at MVP's point in his career, meaning the same number of fights. I thought that was insane, and I made a video a little while back about it. And the reason is partly this fight. A lot of people just don't know about Anderson Silva's career at 170 pounds before he went to the UFC and went up to 185. He beat Hayato Sakurai, who was a number one welterweight in the world at the time. And then he knocked out Carlos Newton in Pride, who was just recently UFC champion, number one in the world. So he had a good run at 170 pounds before he went up to 185. So this is Hayato Sakurai versus Anderson Silva at Shuto to the Top. It was the name of the event, August 2001. And I'll get it started right now. We can get right into it. But this is only Anderson Silva's 8th professional fight. He's 6-1 leading into this. And Hayato Sakurai was 18-0-2. 18 wins, no losses, 2 draws. The consensus number one welterweight in the world. And as I said before, if you look at the Frank Trigg one I did, please go back and check it out if you haven't already. Rankings were kind of all over the place. So this is Shuto, where Hayato Sakurai was the champ. And at a time when south of, there wasn't really a 185-pound division, but like 170 and south of that, Shuto had some of the best guys in the world. 185 just wasn't as popular and didn't have, the weight classes weren't as standardized. So Shuto had some of the best in the world at lightweight and welterweight, and Hayato Sakurai was number one. Anderson Silva, what I love about this fight is, much like with the GSP fight I showed last time, you can see the elements that would make him amazing. But they're not quite there yet. Now, he's obviously a fantastic fighter, much more orthodox, much more traditional in the way he holds his hands, the way he attacks. One of the things you'll notice is we're not seeing that hands-dropping creativity all over the place kind of style that he had when he was the number one middleweight in the world, greatest of all time. We're not seeing that yet. Another thing you'll notice is he's at 170, so he's tall, but man, he's skinny at 170 pounds. he's just skin and bones. So physically, he doesn't look like the same guy. He's not the same guy. But Hayato able to get the takedown, and the story to me of the takedown early in this fight, which you're looking at now, is Hayato Sakurai, great submission game, usually really good ground and pound, can't do much with the long legs of Anderson Silva. He's concerned about the guard. And you see heads on the chest. He pops up sometimes to land some punches, but not trying to pass. Usually has a very aggressive guard pass. He doesn't go for that at all. It's kind of like stay safe in these long legs. If you know anything about jiu-jitsu, you're wary in the guard for that reason, going under the leg looking for a sweep very briefly. You have to be cautious with a guy with a build like Anderson Silva. Really long legs, can really wrap you up, go for submissions from a lot of different angles, and it's keeping Hayato Sakurai very cautious on top in the guard. And Anderson Silva, don't know if he had a black belt yet, probably not, but at least a brown belt, at least a good submission game. He was a product of the shootbox team. Vanderlei Silva, Shogun Rua, all those guys, Murillo Ninja. I don't know how many people remember Murillo Ninja, but also a great fighter. So he's very much a product of that system. Good ground game, aggressive stand-up, but much more traditional at this point in his career. But had he fought any great names at this point, Tetsuya Kato, which is another guy that Hayato Sakurai beat, that modern fans, you don't know who that guy is, but tough at the time, very tough. And I think he beat him by decision at another Shuto event. That was a good fight. And then he got his opportunity at the number one guy in the world. But good job by Hayato Sakurai getting on top, taking the advantages away from Anderson Silva. And you'll see the kind of things that led to you could say problems later on in his career, Anderson Silva, when the Chael Sonnen fight where he got beat up for 4.5 rounds. If you could take Anderson Silva down and stay on top of him, and you could do some damage. He did have an active guard. He was tricky with the submission attempts, but if you could neutralize that side of his game, you could have some success. Now, in this first round, that's exactly what Hayato Sakurai is doing, trying to neutralize the range, neutralize the striking, get on top and stay on top. Now, about the judging, nice get up, very quick. And you see, starting out, orthodox. Switching stances a lot, but in a very different way. Not the dynamic, confusing, angling, switching stances. Much more traditional the way he holds his hands and the way he stands. But man, very quick and accurate, especially with the jab in the right hand. Not a ton of head movement, much more traditional Thai, but quick, very, very fast. And everything he throws is right on the button. Hayato Sakurai took that punch and did not like it, gets another throw. Now, Hayato Sakurai, judo background, he loves those hip throws. He loves the head and arm. Got him in a lot of trouble against Frank Trigg. It's going to be an issue in this fight as well, but that tendency to turn all the way and get those judo-style throws, they're all or nothing. If they don't work, you end up in big trouble. So once again, he's on top, 30 seconds left. I don't know about the judging in Shuto. Every time I've seen a Shuto fight, the commentary is not in English. So I don't know the rules because I don't speak or read Japanese. So as far as I know, I think they judged the fight as a whole, like Pride. I don't know if they did round-by-round scoring. It almost certainly wasn't a 10-8 system back then. If someone knows, please inform me in the comment section how judging worked in Shuto. I'm not sure because I've seen a ton of Shuto fights, but it's all in Japanese. I used to get bootleg copies from Little Tokyo. That's the end of round 1. And that's the game plan for Hayato Sakurai. Take him down, stay on top of him, hopefully get my submission game going, but if I can't pass the guard, stay on top and get some ground and pound going. There's a shootbox team in his corner. Hayato Sakurai, a legend in Japan at this time. At the top of his game. But Anderson Silva, man, you see the pieces, like the flashes of greatness that we would really see develop in the UFC. But this is 2001 where, a lot of times you were great at one thing that was good enough to get you through. These are two very, very high-level guys who had a real impact on the sport, meeting very early in the evolution of the sport. And that was comparatively rare. And I'll show some more fights that have that kind of theme to them, of guys who were kind of ahead of their time, meeting up when usually, if you had one good thing, you could beat most guys at this point in MMA. So Sakurai trying to keep the distance, but here he is committing to the head and arm throw. Really bad idea. This is why the head and arm throw isn't a good idea in MMA. If you turn and he wasn't able to complete it, the head slips out, Anderson Silva ends up on top of him. Now, you see Silva getting over that knee. Whenever you have butterfly guard, half butterfly, which is what this is, you see one leg's over, the other one isn't. Hayato Sakurai, as explained in the last video, was at Abu Dhabi 1999, I believe, and took second or third. Excellent submission game. So, and he likes to operate a lot from butterfly guard. Now here he's stuck in half butterfly, so you can't really use it like closed guard. You can't really use it like butterfly guard. So Anderson, what he's going to do is keep his hip tight on that foot to keep Hayato Sakurai from extending his right leg. That's what he's going to try to do. And that works. Whenever you have a knee, essentially, you have a butterfly side, that's the side you want to pass. That becomes the weak side of the guard. Anderson Silva staying stable on top. Hey, buddies. You're hearing my dogs panting. It's kind of hot here. You see good extension with the legs. Anderson keeping the pressure on. And Hayato Sakurai trying to get something going from butterfly guard, from an open guard position, and so far not able to do it. But it's almost surprising that Anderson would spend this much time on the ground with Hayato Sakurai, that he wouldn't break off and try and use his striking game, which, of course, is his bread and butter. But staying chest to chest, very close, that pretty much stifles your opponent's submission game. That's what he's trying to do. Can't pass in that position. You're just trying not to get caught. The problem with Hayato Sakurai's open guard position is anytime you extend butterfly guard, you give your opponent a chance to pass. You give your opponent a chance to put pressure on either side because you're pushing him away and you can't use your legs. So you're pushing him away, your legs are straight, that's when you can go over the top and maybe pass. And Anderson's not going for any of that. He'd rather stay on top and stay safe at this point. And also in Japan, if you're not used to Japanese fights, why don't they stand him up? Why don't they stand him up? They hardly ever did that in Japan. It just wasn't really much of a thing. If you watch something like Sakuraba, Carlos Newton, fights like that, they would stay on the ground. They'd let him stay there. There wasn't this, it goes to the ground, people start booing, they stand him up. It really didn't work that way. So you got much longer ground exchanges than you get in modern MMA. So here's kind of a turning point in the fight. Hayato Sakurai gives him a couple leg kicks. Lets him up. And here Anderson Silva starting to do Anderson Silva stuff from the southpaw stance. Very good at reading. Very good at switching stances. Good hook over the top by Sakurai, but starting to get his timing. You know, this is Anderson Silva again. We see a guy who, once he gets a read on you, once he figures out your timing, he can start picking you apart, and that's what he's doing. Oh, beautiful shot. That was a desperation takedown. That's not going to work. Head and arm, once again, the head slips out, and this time he's in deep trouble. Hooks in, body triangle, and Anderson Silva with those long arms. He can get underneath the armpit. Look at that. All the way to the chin. And just brutalizing Sakurai. Body triangle, long legs, very hard to escape. And that combination of long legs lock down your torso, and then the long arms can get underneath the armpits and around your guard. So you can shell up and he can still get inside and hit you. Now, another thing that I've pointed out in other fights in Japan, they treated injuries during fights. Right here, they wipe off the blood, they make sure it's not horribly broken, they check it, and I always thought this was hilarious. Anderson Silva is holding his hair back so they can get to his nose to check it. But they're in the same position. They're not changing. Anderson Silva's still on his back. But like holding him. Like, oh, sure, you all right? Yeah, check it out. Making sure he's okay. Goes back to unloading on him. Just like that. Like, hey, were you good? I remember laughing my ass off the first time I saw this. They go back to the same position. And boom, go. And then I can go back to beating the piss out of you. That's a thing in MMA that you can't understand if you haven't done it. Like, you know, it's just business, you know. Nicest guy in the world until he starts hitting you. Now going hard for the rear naked. Doesn't have the greatest position in the world. You see it's not exactly under the chin. Doesn't have it deep enough. But one of the strategies here, there's not a lot of time left in the round. Also, Hayato Sakurai's nose is jacked up. You saw him bleeding out of his nose. Maybe you can get a tap because you're putting so much pressure on him and he can't breathe well through his nose. So one of the reasons Anderson might be going super hard for a position that isn't great is if a guy can't breathe out of his nose, sometimes you get the tap anyway. You get across the jaw, it goes back, and the guy can't breathe out of his nose, and you can get it, but he does not. But that was a bad ending to the round for Hayato Sakurai. See, Anderson Silva's corner is elated. But once again, bad head and arm throw. Twice. And that's the interesting thing. It's the first time he lost the head, it didn't work out, ended up in bad position. He went back to it again, lost the head, ended up in bad position, and then back mounted, and that's when all this happened. Great ground and pound by Anderson Silva. Good job sneaking that arm under. Couldn't get it all the way under the chin, though. The problem with the body lock, the body triangle, for going for the rear naked is twofold. Number one, it tends to keep you a little bit high. So you usually want to be right behind somebody when you go for the rear naked. With the body triangle, as you can see, his head is really far above Hayato Sakurai's head. So you're kind of reaching down for the rear naked. It's less powerful. Also, without having both hooks in, you can't control the hips. So you're basically around your opponent's waist. And so you're attached to him like a backpack, but you can't flatten him out like you could if you had both hooks in. So that's the weakness to that particular position. It's great for ground and pound, though. Now, here we are in round 3. Hayato Sakurai has some work to do because at range, right here, Anderson Silva, only his 8th professional fight, but man, so good at picking guys apart. So good with the accuracy, snaps his jab, snaps his power shots. Once he gets a read on you, it's so hard to stifle his offense. Good job by Hayato Sakurai getting the body lock, outside trip, half mount position, half guard, and they go underneath the ropes. Now, fortunately, in this fight, the ropes just weren't as big of a factor as they were in the Trig fight, for example. Go back and watch that if you haven't seen it. But it's kind of desperation time now for Hayato Sakurai. He's way behind. Once again, I'm not sure about the scoring system in Japan, in Shuto at this time. I think it was the fight as a whole, but I'm not sure. If someone who's Japanese is better than mine can watch this with sound at some point and tell me, that'd be great. But Anderson Silva, interestingly enough, isn't fighting as though, because normally, if this were in the UFC, for example, it would be 1 round apiece. Last round was certainly Anderson Silva's. It wasn't necessarily so dominant it would be a 10-8 round. So normally, Anderson Silva would have to really turn it on this round. You don't want to spend the final round on your back, on your butt, with the guy on top of you. Maybe you lose 2 rounds to 1, because I thought Hayato Sakurai took the first round. So, but Anderson Silva not fighting necessarily with that sense of urgency. He's not inactive from his back, but he's not fighting as though this is scored on a round system and he needs his 3rd round. So, low with the guard now. Usually, when someone's low with the guard, a low guard means a sweeping guard, a high guard means a submission guard. So, Anderson did a good job of controlling the wrists, but not pushing off with his feet to really try to get this fight standing again. He's not being that active with his guard from the bottom, as though he needs this fight back on his feet. He's not fighting like that. But Hayato Sakurai can't get that much done with his ground and pound either. I mean, this is a guy who needs to do some damage to get back in this fight, and he's so far not able to do that. Anderson using the short punches. You see, I'm surprised he doesn't put his feet on Sakurai's hips and push him back and just, get enough distance to get back to his feet. He seems content to work from guard. And you see his corner clapping at him, going, come on, let's get this done. Remember, in Japan, Hayato Sakurai is a legend in Japan, extremely popular at this time. There are only 2 minutes left in the final round. Yes, Anderson Silva's ahead, but I wouldn't bet on it. He needs to finish this round strong in order to be confident for a win, because right now it seems like he's ahead and just hanging on. But these are the things you see a young Anderson Silva who, man, he's good, but when you compare it to what he was going to be later, you see little elements of that. You see the accuracy, you see the targeting, you see the combinations, you see the technique, but you don't see the creativity. You don't see the confidence. You don't see the ability to almost to fight ahead of his opponent, and you don't see that yet. It starts developing later, and maybe I'll go into some other fights, that in other organizations where he looked even better. That might be possible, but you're seeing an Anderson Silva that is showing hints of what he would become. Now, a minute left in the final round. He's back on his feet, and this is not good for Hayato Sakurai. Nice sharp ground and pound, nice right hand there. And he's content to kick out the legs. And Hayato Sakurai needs to get back to his feet and get something done, and he's not. That is a tired man right there. And Anderson seems to really feel that he has this fight sewn up. It has to be judged on a whole for him to do this, because round by round, this is a close 3rd round, and he's only decisively won round 2, but I think they judge this on the fight as a whole, and on that, he believes he's won. But man, quick jabs. That is the story of his stand-up at this stage in his career. A bit more orthodox, but very, very accurate. And Hayato Sakurai not able to get back in it on the feet, and that is it. Hayato Sakurai takes his first professional loss, and Anderson Silva becomes the #1 welterweight in the world. He would hold it briefly, I think maybe even just like a week or so, before Carlos Newton beat Pat Miletich and became the #1 guy in the world. what we saw here at this point, I remember, when I was into MMA in 2001, and you'd hunt for these things and find articles and find out what was going on all over the world. We were starting to see the dominance of the UFC when it came to rankings, when it came to people's understanding of how good someone was. Before, it was kind of all over the place. You could be a number one guy because of what you did in Japan, and that's Anderson Silva getting the decision victory. What we saw with this is that Anderson Silva beat the number one guy in the world, which was Hayato Sakurai. Carlos Newton beats Pat Miletich, and he leapfrogs him. And I think that's the last time anyone outside of the UFC was considered the number one welterweight in the world, was Anderson Silva. So that's a little history lesson for you guys about Anderson Silva's career at 170 pounds. He was number one briefly before Carlos Newton. And I think that shows how the sport has really evolved and changed. This was one of the last eras where somebody outside of the major promotions could become number one, and after that, it was pretty much UFC and Pride, and that's it. So anyway, that's a young Anderson Silva taking on Hayato Sakurai. If you liked it, spread the word, and I'll do another one early next week. See you then.